Have you ever stopped to think about how we went from computers that were the size of a whole room, weighing 30 tons, to the super powerful little things we carry in our pockets? Well, in the next few minutes, we're going to do just that. We're going to trace that unbelievable journey from the ENIAC all the way to the iPhone. Let's dive in.
So, that's the big question, isn't it? How on earth do we manage to shrink a 30-ton room-sized monster down to something that fits in your hand and is literally millions of times more powerful? It seems impossible, but that's exactly the story we're going to unpack.
And to really get your head around this, just look at these numbers. The ENIAC, one of the very first electronic computers, weighed as much as a school bus. It could do about 5,000 calculations a second, which, hey, was absolutely mind-blowing back in 1946. Now look at your smartphone. It weighs practically nothing and it performs billions of operations per second. That's not just a step up, it's a completely different universe.
To understand this insane leap, we actually have to go way back before digital electronics, to a time of gears, clanking relays, and just massive, massive machines.
You know, the idea of a computer is actually way older than most people think. Back in the 1830s, you had Charles Babbage dreaming up this mechanical, steam-powered thing called the analytical engine. But it wasn't until the late 1930s that we started seeing real progress with these electromechanical relays. They were basically just physical switches that clicked open and shut to make calculations. Machines like the Harvard Mark I were absolute marvels of engineering. I mean, a 50-foot-long monster using thousands of these clicking relays. But man, was it slow, clunky, and always breaking down.
So the next big breakthrough was obvious. We had to ditch the moving parts and go purely electronic. And this, my friends, is the age of the giant brains.
The secret weapon here was the vacuum tube. It's this simple glass tube that could switch electricity on and off with zero moving parts, making it 1,000 times faster than a relay. This was a total game changer. It's the tech that powered Colossus, which helped crack Nazi codes in World War II, and of course the ENIAC. But, and this is a big but, the ENIAC was a beast. We're talking 18,000 vacuum tubes that were constantly burning out, and it drank enough electricity to power a small town. It was a huge leap in speed for sure, but it created this massive headache when it came to size and just keeping the thing running.
Now, while the hardware was getting faster, a quiet revolution was happening on the software side. See, before 1945, if you wanted a computer to do a new job, you had to physically get in there and rewire it. A total nightmare. Then, this brilliant guy, John von Neumann, comes along with a groundbreaking idea, the stored program concept. He said, hey, what if we store the instructions for the program in the same memory as the data? Suddenly, you could change what a computer did just by loading a new program. This was the birth of software as we know it. The machine was no longer the program, it was a flexible tool that could run any program. This one idea unlocked the entire future of computing.
Okay, so the vacuum tube solved the speed problem, but it created this enormous size problem. So the next great challenge was obvious: shrink the computer down. This is the story of miniaturization. And this slide just lays out the road to miniaturization perfectly. It all kicked off in 1947 at Bell Labs with the invention of the transistor. This tiny little thing could do everything a big, fragile vacuum tube could do, but it was way smaller, way more reliable, and used just a fraction of the power. Then, in 1958, we got the integrated circuit, basically a way to print hundreds of transistors onto a single tiny silicon chip. Each one of these steps made computers smaller, faster, cheaper, and more reliable. It was the pathway that led directly to the personal computer.
And this new technology immediately started powering the next wave of computers. The integrated circuit made machines like the legendary IBM System/360 possible. This wasn't just one computer, it was a whole family of them for businesses and scientists, and it absolutely cemented IBM's dominance, bringing serious computing power into the corporate world. But even with these integrated circuits, computers were still these huge, expensive things for big corporations and governments. The next leap, well, it was maybe the most radical of all. Putting an entire computer's brain onto a single chip, and with it, creating the personal computer.
2,250. That's the number. That's how many transistors Intel managed to pack onto a chip the size of your fingernail back in 1971. That chip was the Intel 4004, the world's first microprocessor. For the first time ever, the entire central processing unit was on a single piece of silicon. And just to put that in perspective, today's chips have billions of transistors. But this was the moment the brain of the computer became one single mass-producible part. This was the spark.
And this is where it all really kicked off, the MITS Altair 8800. I know, it doesn't look like much, right? It was just a box of switches and lights that you had to build yourself. But for about $400, you could have your very own computer. When this thing hit the cover of Popular Electronics in 1975, it sparked a revolution. It inspired a whole generation of hobbyists, including a couple of kids named Bill Gates and Paul Allen, who saw it and decided to write a programming language for it.
Then came 1977. Man, what a year. This was the year the personal computer just exploded into the mainstream. You had what they called the 1977 Trinity. First, the Apple II, which came fully assembled and had amazing color graphics. Then you had the Tandy TRS-80, which you could just walk into a Radio Shack and buy. And finally, the Commodore PET, which became a huge favorite in schools. These machines were ready to go right out of the box, and they brought computing to the masses.
There was still one big problem, though. Early PCs were a real pain to use. You had to type in these weird cryptic commands to get them to do anything. But instead of typing some nonsense, imagine just clicking on a little picture of a file and dragging it to a picture of a disk. That brilliant idea came from researchers at Xerox PARC. It was called the Graphical User Interface, or GUI, and it was Apple that really brought it to the world with the Macintosh in 1984, making computers truly intuitive and accessible for pretty much everyone.
And really, from the GUI onward, the story has just been this incredible acceleration of shrinking things down and making them mobile, bringing computing off our desks and into every single corner of our lives.
I mean, just look at the timeline from the 90s on. The pace is just breathtaking. The PowerBook basically invented the modern laptop. The Palm Pilot put a digital assistant in our pockets. The iPhone completely reinvented the phone and kicked off the whole smartphone era. And now the Apple Watch puts a powerful computer right on our wrists. Each one of these devices has made computing more personal, more portable, and just woven it deeper into our daily lives.
So when you step back and you look at the whole picture, it's just an incredible story, isn't it? In less than a single lifetime, we've gone from these room-sized electronic brains that cost millions of dollars to globally connected supercomputers that we carry around without a second thought. And it's all built on just a handful of foundational ideas: the vacuum tube, the stored program, the transistor, and the microprocessor. So we started with giant brains that filled entire rooms. Now we're on the edge of an era of smart dust, tiny, invisible computers that are just all around us. You know, sensors in our clothes, in the paint on our walls, in the soil on farms, all talking to each other. So I gotta ask, what's next? If we've come this far in just a few decades, what are computers gonna look like in the future? What do you think?